Let's be real. Why is the word no so terrifying for most men? Why does it feel easier to agree, to nod, to go along, even when inside you know you don't want to? You've been there, right? A woman asks for something, maybe it's small, maybe it's huge. Your instinct says, I don't want this, but your mouth says, sure, no problem. Why? Because you don't want her upset, because you're afraid she'll pull away, because deep down you believe saying yes will make her stay. But here's the truth no one tells you. Constant yes doesn't make her stay. It makes her drift. It doesn't make her respect you. It makes her question you. Ask yourself, how many times have you gone along with something just to keep the peace? How many times did you spend time, energy, even money, not because you wanted to, but because you were scared of what would happen if you didn't? Did it ever really work? Or did it just leave you feeling drained, frustrated, and invisible? This is the trap. Society tells men that love means sacrifice, that attraction means constant giving, that respect comes from being available every single time, no matter what. But let me ask you, if your time is always free, if your energy is always on tap, if your attention is unlimited, where's the value? Where's the respect? Where's the attraction? Boundaries are not about being cold. They're not about being controlling. They are about truth. They are about showing her and the world that you are a man with a backbone, a man who values his peace, a man who understands if everything is given away freely, nothing is worth anything. And here's the twist. You don't have to scream. You don't have to fight. You don't have to explain for hours. A calm no can carry more weight than 1,000 excuses. That's power, that's presence, that's respect. So in this video, we're going to break down how to say no without fear, without guilt, without drama. How to live with boundaries that attract instead of push away, and how this one shift can transform not just your relationships, but your entire life. Because when you master boundaries, you master yourself, and when you master yourself, you become unstoppable. The fear of losing when you say no. Here's a question. Why does the word no feel like a risk? Why do so many men believe that if they say no, the woman will leave, or worse, stop loving them? Think about it. How many times have you bitten your tongue, gone against your gut, and said yes to something you didn't want, just because you feared rejection? You weren't agreeing out of joy, you were agreeing out of fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of losing connection. Fear of being seen as selfish or not enough. But pause for a moment. Who taught you that? Who taught you that women only stay when you give them everything? Who made you believe that love is built on compliance instead of respect? Because here's the problem. When your decisions are driven by fear, you're no longer leading your life, you're reacting to hers. And when you're reacting, you're not strong, you're not grounded, you're not attractive, you're just surviving. Let me hit you with something uncomfortable. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you're teaching her one dangerous lesson. Your needs don't matter. And if your needs don't matter, then over time, neither will you. Have you noticed how men who are too nice always end up overlooked? How the guy who bends, adjusts, and gives everything still gets left behind? Why is that? Because deep down, women don't respect a man who fears her disapproval more than he values his own truth. Let me ask you straight, what's more dangerous? Losing her respect slowly, day by day, as you abandon yourself to keep her happy, or risking her temporary disappointment by calmly standing your ground? See, this is where most men get it wrong. They think boundaries equal loss, but in reality, no boundaries guarantee loss, because without them you're not in a relationship, you're in servitude. And servitude kills attraction, every time. So the problem isn't just about saying yes when you want to say no. The deeper problem is this. You've tied your self-worth to her approval. You've placed her emotions above your own integrity. And in doing so, you've given away the one thing you can't afford to lose, your power. Now the real question is, what happens when you stop fearing the word no? What happens when you realize that saying no doesn't kill attraction, it creates it? What happens when you see that calm refusal can spark respect, mystery, and desire far more than endless yes ever could? That's the shift. That's the turning point. And once you grasp it, everything changes. The silent test you don't see coming. Let me ask you something strange. Do you think women only test you with words, with direct questions, with arguments? Or could it be that most of the real tests are silent, hidden, and unspoken? Because here's the truth, many of the biggest tests don't come when she's yelling or demanding something. They come in the quiet moments, in the pauses, in how she watches your reaction without saying a single word. Think about it. When she suddenly goes cold, do you panic and rush in to fix it? When she delays her replies, do you lose patience and send 3 more messages just to make sure she still cares? When she withdraws her warmth, do you instantly question your worth and beg for reassurance? Why does this matter? Because every one of those situations is a test of your center. It's not about what she said, it's about what you do when nothing is being said. But here's the problem most men fall into. They see silence as danger. They see absence as rejection. They see emotional shifts as threats. And the moment they react out of fear, they fail the test. They show that their stability depends on her mood. Have you noticed this pattern? The guy who loses his mind when she pulls back. The guy who explodes when she ignores his text. Or the guy who chases harder the moment she gets distant. What happens to those men? They collapse. They become desperate. They push her further away. And here's the hidden cost. You don't just lose her respect in that moment, you lose your own. You teach yourself that her silence is bigger than your strength, that her mood controls your value, that her approval defines your peace. But ask yourself, how can you be attractive if you're not even in control of your own center? How can you be respected if your calm breaks the moment things don't go your way? How can she trust your strength if your emotions are always dancing to the rhythm of hers? This is the real trap, not the words, not the arguments, but the subtle shifts that trigger your fear of being unwanted. That fear is what destroys men. Not the woman, not the silence, the fear. So here's the challenge. Can you learn to stand calm when nothing makes sense? Can you stay steady when her warmth turns cold without rushing to fix what isn't yours to fix? Can you hold the silence without letting it eat away your confidence? Because when you do, something powerful happens. She feels it, she sees it, and she respects it. Why? Because most men can't. Most men collapse under the weight of uncertainty. But the man who remains calm, he becomes rare, he becomes magnetic, he becomes unshakable. That's the shift. And it starts with one decision, to stop seeing her silence as a threat and start seeing it as a mirror reflecting your strength or your weakness. Which one do you want her to see? Why yes to everything slowly destroys attraction. Here's the hook. Have you ever wondered why the more a man bends over backwards for a woman, the less she seems to respect him? Why is it that saying yes all the time doesn't bring closeness, but instead brings distance? Think about it. Why does the man who never argues, who agrees with everything, who always puts her above himself, somehow end up ignored, rejected, or taken for granted? Why do men who try to be the perfect boyfriend usually get the coldest goodbye? Let's ask the hard questions. If you say yes to everything, where is your edge? If you never stand your ground, where is your strength? If your answer is always whatever you want, then what's left of you? Most men don't realize this, but constant agreement kills mystery. It kills polarity. It kills attraction. Because here's the truth, women don't want to date a mirror. They don't want to be with a man who simply reflects their desires back at them. They want to feel the presence of a man who stands firm in his own. But here's the problem. Society has taught men that the way to keep a woman is to overgive, to overtext, to overcommit, to over-explain. The world says, never upset her, never challenge her, never say no. And what happens when men follow this advice? They become hollow, they lose their spine. They lose the very thing that makes them attractive: boundaries. Here's the paradox. Every time you erase your boundaries just to keep her happy, you think you're investing in love. But really, you're draining it. You're giving away respect piece by piece, and eventually, she looks at you not as a man she desires, but as a man she can control, and control always kills attraction. So ask yourself, why is saying no so scary? Why does the word feel like rejection? Why do men believe that if they set limits, they'll lose the woman they care about? Isn't it strange that the very thing men avoid is the exact thing that builds respect? Because here's the truth. A man without boundaries is not free. He's a servant to her mood, a prisoner to her demands, a puppet pulled by strings he doesn't even see. And deep down, he knows it. That's why he feels drained, weak, resentful, because he traded his backbone for approval, and approval never lasts. But imagine this instead: a man who can calmly say, "No, that doesn't work for me." No anger, no drama, just clarity. What does that project? Power, self-respect, stability. And here's the secret. When you respect yourself enough to draw the line, she respects you more. Because women don't lose interest when you set boundaries. They lose interest when you don't. They crave the presence of a man who values his time, his energy, his life. A man who says yes when he means yes, and no when he means no. That's not rejection, it's authenticity. And authenticity is magnetic. So here's the bigger question. Are you willing to let go of being the yes man, the people pleaser, the approval seeker? Are you willing to choose respect over validation? Because that choice determines everything. A man who can't say no is never trusted. But a man who can, he becomes unshakable. He becomes rare. He becomes the kind of man she wants to follow, not because he chases her, but because he leads himself. Why constant availability kills desire? Here's a question most men never stop to ask. Why does being always there for her actually push her away instead of pulling her closer? Think about it. Why does the man who texts her every morning, replies within seconds, rearranges his schedule, and gives her unlimited access, suddenly find himself ignored, ghosted, or replaced? Why is it that the men who never seem to be around are the ones she's always chasing? Isn't that strange? Here's the hidden truth. Availability is only attractive when it's earned. If you give it away endlessly, it loses its value. Imagine this: if you could have chocolate cake every hour of the day, would it feel special anymore? Would it feel exciting? Or would it turn into something ordinary, maybe even boring? That's exactly how attraction works. But here's the problem. Most men think consistency means constantly showing up. They confuse being reliable with being predictable. They think the more time I give her, the more she'll love me. Yet in reality, the opposite happens. She doesn't crave his presence because she never has the chance to miss it. Ask yourself, how can she look forward to your calls if she knows you'll always text first? How can she value your time if you drop everything at the sound of her voice? How can she chase you if you've already made yourself impossible to lose? This is the paradox. Men believe abundance will create love, but love actually grows in scarcity. Desire is born in absence, not in constant presence. Space is what makes the heart lean forward. And when you rob a woman of that space by giving her unlimited access, you suffocate the very desire you're trying to build. But here's where it gets deeper. Being too available doesn't just lower attraction, it lowers respect. Because when a man shows he has nothing else going on in his life except her, what does that signal? It signals emptiness. It signals a lack of purpose. It signals that his time is cheap, and cheap time always leads to cheap value. Now think about high-value men. Do they clear their schedules just to reply instantly? Do they cancel important plans just to hang out whenever she calls? Do they spend hours waiting by the phone, desperate to be noticed? No. High-value men are selective with their time. They give presents when it matters, but they don't sacrifice their mission, their growth, or their priorities, just to be constantly available. And here's the irony. Women respect those men more. They lean in more. They invest more. Why? Because when time is scarce, every moment feels important. When you're not always available, she treasures the access she does get. Your presence becomes a privilege, not a given. So here's the problem every man must face. Are you too available? Do you mistake constant attention for genuine connection? Do you believe that being around her 24/7 will make her stay when in fact it's the very reason she drifts away? The truth is simple. Scarcity creates value. Time is your most powerful currency, and if you give it away without limits, you rob yourself of worth. But when you guard it, when you spend it with intention, when you balance availability with mystery, suddenly your presence becomes rare, and what's rare is always desired. So the question is, will you keep drowning attraction with your endless availability, or will you finally learn to create space, to build mystery, to let her feel the weight of your absence? Because in that absence, her desire is born. Why explaining yourself too much destroys respect? Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how, the more you explain yourself to a woman, the less she seems to take you seriously? The more reasons you give, the more she seems to doubt you. Isn't that strange? Why is it that a man who keeps his words short, calm, and clear seems powerful, while the man who goes on and on trying to prove his point seems weak? Why is it that silence can sometimes say more than 1,000 words? Here's the truth. Over-explaining is not strength. It's insecurity dressed as honesty, and women can feel it. They can sense when you're speaking to be understood versus when you're speaking to be approved. And approval seeking, it kills respect instantly. Think about it. When a man says, "I can't make it tonight because I have work and I also promised my friend I'd help him, and plus I've been tired all week, but please understand I'm not ignoring you," what does that sound like? It sounds like he's begging for her permission. It sounds like his no isn't really a no. It sounds like he's trying to soften his boundaries so she doesn't get upset. But when a man simply says, "I can't tonight, let's do another day," that's it. Calm. Direct. No need for paragraphs. That's when his words carry weight. Here's the problem. Most men don't realize that their constant explaining is rooted in fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of disappointing her. Fear of not being enough. And instead of showing confidence, they show doubt in every extra word they add. Ask yourself this. If you truly believed in your decisions, would you need to defend them endlessly? If you trusted your worth, would you feel the need to prove it with explanations? If you stood firmly in your boundary, would you crumble at the thought of her disapproval? This is where men lose power, not because women demand explanations, but because men hand them over like confessions. They think talking more will earn trust, when in reality, talking less earns more respect. Here's another layer. When you explain too much, you shift the frame. Instead of being the man who decides, you become the man who asks for permission. Instead of leading, you start seeking validation, and women don't fall in love with men who need their approval. They fall in love with men who approve of themselves. Now, let's zoom out. Why do powerful leaders, kings, CEOs, warriors, always speak less? Why do their words feel heavier? Because they don't dilute their speech. They don't seek comfort in rambling. They say what they mean and let silence carry the rest. That's not arrogance, that's confidence. But here's the uncomfortable question. Are you the man who hides behind long texts and endless excuses? Or are you the man who speaks clearly, sets his boundary, and moves forward with calm certainty? Because here's the truth. When you stop over-explaining, two things happen. First, she respects you more because your words stand like stone. Second, you free yourself from the chains of approval. You live lighter. You stop negotiating your worth. The solution is not to be cold or dismissive. The solution is to be decisive, to let your words match your backbone, to replace the nervous need to explain with the calm power of simplicity. So ask yourself, will you keep drowning your power with endless words, or will you learn the art of saying less, and in that silence, speak louder than ever? Why oversharing your feelings can destroy attraction. Here's the paradox nobody tells men. Society screams, be vulnerable, open up, share every detail of your feelings. But when men actually do it, something strange happens. The respect fades, the attraction slips, the energy shifts. Why? Why is it that when a man dumps every thought, every fear, every insecurity onto a woman, she doesn't feel closer, she feels burdened? Why does she lean back instead of leaning in? Why does she feel less safe, not more safe, when a man emotionally spills without control? The problem isn't that men have feelings, every man does. The problem is how those feelings are delivered. When a man shares every high and low like a diary entry, it doesn't build connection, it builds pressure. It turns her from a partner into a therapist. It makes her responsible for holding his emotional storms instead of trusting him to carry his own. Ask yourself this: if you flood her with your doubts, who is holding the frame of strength? If you collapse at every wave of fear, who is protecting the stability of the relationship? If you make her your emotional anchor, do you realize you've already given away the very thing she was drawn to in the first place? Here's the truth. Women don't crave endless emotional unloading from a man. They crave a man who can feel deeply, yet stand firmly. They want a man who can face pain, but not collapse under it. Who can share his heart, but not make his heart her burden. That balance, emotional depth with emotional mastery, is what creates trust. Think about it. When a man says, I had a tough day, but I'm handling it, he shows strength and vulnerability at the same time. He lets her see his humanity, but he also shows that he's grounded. But when a man says, I don't know what to do, I can't handle this, everything feels hopeless, I just need you to fix me, he loses that grounding. He's not a rock anymore, he's sand slipping through fingers, and women feel that difference instantly. They respect the man who owns his storm, not the man who becomes the storm. Here's the deeper problem. Many men confuse connection with confession. They think closeness means unloading every thought, but true connection comes from presence, not pressure, from shared energy, not emotional dumping, from showing strength through balance, not weakness through collapse. So the question is, are you the man who leaks every feeling out of panic? Or are you the man who feels everything, yet channels it with calm precision? Do you make her your emotional caretaker, or do you remain the man she can lean on, even when your own storms hit? The solution is not emotional silence, it's emotional control, not suppression, control. Suppression means ignoring, control means owning. Suppression buries, control refines. That's the difference between weakness and strength. When you practice this balance, something powerful happens. She sees your depth without losing respect. She feels safe in your presence because your emotions don't shake the ground beneath her. They reveal your humanity without stealing her stability. That's the secret of Stoic attraction. So let me ask you, will you keep confusing oversharing with connection, or will you master the art of sharing with strength, where every word shows both your heart and your backbone? Why being too available destroys your value. Let me ask you something. Why do people value diamonds more than pebbles? Why do front row tickets sell out instantly, while empty seats in the back remain untouched? Why is it that the rarest things command the highest attention? Now flip it. Why do men kill their own value by making themselves always available, always ready, always free, always there the second she calls, texts, or even hints? Think about it. If you respond instantly every time, what are you telling her? If you cancel your plans just to see her, what are you showing? If you make yourself permanently on call, what message are you sending about your own life? Here's the harsh truth. Constant availability screams one thing: I have nothing else going on, you are my whole world. And guess what? That doesn't make her feel special. It makes her feel pressured. It makes her feel like she already owns you. And when someone feels like they already own you, they stop valuing you. Ask yourself this: why should she chase your time if your time is always up for grabs? Why should she respect your attention if your attention costs nothing? Why should she desire your presence if your presence is guaranteed no matter what? This is where so many men fall into the trap. They believe being always there shows love, but in reality it kills attraction. Love thrives in space. Desire thrives in scarcity. Mystery thrives in the unknown. But when you are always available, always predictable, always on call, you erase the very tension that makes her want more. Here's the problem. When you never say no, you teach her your yes has no weight. When you never choose yourself, you show her that your world revolves only around her. And deep down, women don't respect that. They don't want a man orbiting around them. They want a man with his own orbit, his own gravity, his own world that pulls her in. So ask yourself honestly, do you spend every free moment chasing, texting, proving? Do you drop your priorities the second she appears? Do you live in a way that says, I am available 24/7? If yes, then understand, you're not being kind. You're being cheap. You're giving away your most valuable resource, your time, for nothing. The solution isn't to play games. It isn't about ignoring her on purpose or pretending you're busy. That's childish. The solution is to actually be busy, to have a life so rich, so full, so meaningful that you naturally aren't available every second, to live with purpose so real that sometimes you can't text back instantly, not because you're trying to trick her, but because your life demands your attention. When you live this way, something shifts. Suddenly, your time has weight, your yes matters, your presence feels like a privilege, not a guarantee. She leans in more because she can feel the difference. You are not a man waiting to be chosen. You are a man already chosen by his purpose, his mission, his life. Scarcity is what gives value, and your time, your energy, your attention, they're the rarest things you own. Don't waste them by being permanently available. Let her earn the moments. Let her crave the space between. Let her feel the value of your presence, because it's not something she can take for granted. The trap of chasing validation. Let me ask you, why do so many men feel empty when they don't get a reply right away? Why do they stare at their phone, waiting for a message as if their worth is measured in blue ticks? Why do they feel high when she compliments them and crushed when she doesn't? Here's the ugly truth. Most men today are hooked on validation. They need women to constantly reassure them. They need attention, likes, hearts, emojis. Without it, they feel like nothing. But here's the problem. When your confidence depends on her response, you're not strong, you're weak, and women sense it instantly. Ask yourself this: what happens when your happiness lives in her pocket, on her phone screen? What happens when your confidence rises or falls based on how quickly she texts you back? What happens when your whole mood depends on whether she laughs at your joke or ignores it? It's like being a puppet. Every move of yours depends on strings she doesn't even know she's pulling. That's not attraction, that's slavery. Men confuse validation with connection. They think if she likes me, then I'm valuable. If she doesn't, then I'm not. But that's a lie. Value doesn't come from her words. Value doesn't come from her approval. Value comes from you, from your competence, from your growth, from your ability to look in the mirror and respect the man staring back. Think about this. Why do kings not beg for praise? Why do men with power walk into a room calm and unshaken? Because they already know who they are. They don't need applause. Their presence alone speaks for them. That's what real confidence feels like. Quiet, unshaken, rooted in self-respect. But most men today, they live like gamblers in a casino, spinning reels, hoping for a jackpot text. Every ding on their phone is a bet. Every reply is a hit of dopamine, and the more they chase it, the more they lose themselves. The irony? The more you seek validation, the less you get it. Because women don't admire men who beg. They admire men who stand. Men who move with purpose, whether or not anyone is watching. Men who say, I know my worth, and I don't need you to tell me. So here's the real question. What would your life look like if you stopped chasing? What would change if you no longer cared about instant replies, emojis, or constant reassurance? What would shift if you became your own source of validation? The answer is simple. You'd become magnetic, because when you don't need validation, you project strength. When you don't cling, you create space. When you don't beg, you command respect. And that is when attraction happens naturally. The solution isn't to ignore her. It's not to play too cool or pretend you don't care. That's fake. The solution is to actually not need it, to build a life so strong, skills so sharp, and purpose so deep that her opinion becomes a bonus, not your oxygen. That's what Stoic wisdom teaches us. A man grounded in himself is free. He doesn't rise and fall based on someone else's attention. He walks steady. He stays calm. He doesn't chase approval because he already approves of himself. And when a man reaches that level, something amazing happens. She starts chasing his approval. She starts craving his attention, because suddenly it's not guaranteed. Suddenly it has weight. Suddenly it means something. So the choice is yours. Do you want to live like a gambler chasing coins of validation, or like a man who prints his own currency of self-worth? Because one path leads to weakness, the other leads to peace, freedom, and a power no one can take away. The final answer: freedom, power, and peace are already yours. Stop. Just stop for a second and think. All this time you've been chasing, proving, waiting, giving, like a hamster on a wheel. Constant motion, constant worry. But what if I told you the solution was already in front of you? You don't need to change her. You don't need to perform. You don't need permission. Ask yourself, what's stronger than chasing? What's more magnetic than constant availability? What creates desire without saying a single word? It's simple: detachment, space, absence, living your life fully without making anyone else the center of it. Let's be honest, most advice you hear is garbage. Be charming, text first, show your value. And where does it get you? Heartbreak, frustration, confusion. You're exhausted. She's not invested because your life revolves around her, not the other way around. That's the trap. Now, look back at what you've learned in these pages. You've seen how creating space isn't cold or manipulative, it's magnetic. You've learned why being a man of purpose, a man with competence and self-respect, attracts women naturally. You've seen how scarcity increases your value, how emotional mastery makes you unshakable, how not chasing validation transforms your presence from needy to irresistible, how calmness in the face of tests demonstrates strength and aura. And it's all tied together. You don't need tricks. You don't need games. You need one thing: to be a man who lives for himself first. Picture it. Your mornings aren't about texting her. Your focus isn't on waiting for approval. Your happiness isn't dictated by replies or attention. Instead, your day is full of your work, your passions, your growth. You're building skills, wealth, health, and experiences. You're living, and here's the magic. She notices it, she feels it. She's drawn in naturally because you're scarce, you're calm, you're confident, you're self-sufficient. That's real attraction, that's freedom. And here's the final twist, the power of boundaries without drama. Saying no without guilt, without manipulation, without fear. It's not arrogance, it's clarity. It's respect for your own life. It's a demonstration that your time and energy aren't cheap. You're not reacting to her whims. You're responding with control, and that control, my friend, is irresistible. Think about it. How many men actually master this? Not many. Most are emotional slaves, reacting, chasing, proving. You've already seen the path out. Every concept, every lesson in this script builds on itself. Detachment, absence, self-worth, emotional mastery, scarcity, confidence, they all intersect. The solution isn't somewhere else. It's been given to you, piece by piece, step by step, page by page. So here's the question. What will you do with it? Will you keep spinning the wheel of validation, chasing attention that doesn't define your value? Or will you stand calm, free, powerful, at peace? Already the man she notices because you noticed yourself first. This is Stoic wisdom in action, not philosophy you read and forget. Not theory to impress. Action, presence, mastery. And the secret? It's simple, yet almost no one practices it. Live your life fully. Protect your energy. Respond. Don't react. Be unavailable when it counts. Be calm when tested. Build competence, not approval. Respect your own boundaries. Do that, and everything else falls into place. Attraction, desire, respect, peace, freedom, power. It's not given to you by anyone else. It's earned by the man who already knows his worth and refuses to compromise it. So take this, apply it, start today, because the solution has always been in your hands, and now you finally see it.